Spirit of the Real Machine, by Trevor G. Sabad. Stories by Trevor G. Sabad, artwork by Samden Hour. Excerpts from the Real Machine. In the halls of the machine-built intelligence. Dream meets reality. Smiling faces. Walker and the gangsters. The AIM 3000. What they get up to at night. Evolution of the Real Machine, in a nutshell. In a time towards the end of the 21st century, it is the beginning of a new age in human history. The Machine Age. After the great wars of the 20th century, the rich and powerful hadn't perceived the slow bleeding away of military, political and economic power and the control of technological advance. A megalomaniac, powerful autonomous thinking machines and groups of biologically enhanced and warped humanoids with powerful minds and cruel and wicked intentions, they all planned to strive for control and domination. But then the man behind the machines was just that, a frail human that would have to use all his ingenuity, lying, stealing and killing to steer the world through a conflagration of coups and pogrom towards a world where humans live peacefully. The man was Dr. Callum Walker. He knew that alone he could not succeed, and so he planned to bring a man from another world to Earth, a man that is a spectral shadow of himself. And he hoped that he would be everything that is bad and rotten, a manifestation of the evil that resides within himself and every other human. And yet at the core of their being they were both really just scientists seeking out the truth of the material world, using the power of artificial machine intelligence. Cover of Evolution of the Real Machine. It was the only law of the modern physics that Dr. Callum Walker believed in. The duality of nature. And he meant to break it. Depicting the MBI, top center, Socrates, and the AIM 3000, middle, and Walker and McKee. From Walker's, The Risks of AI. When a human is born, the reality that is projected into its mind by the eye is inverted. The lens system is flawed, and yet nature overcame the flaw by processing experiences by cause and effect, touching, holding, and tasting the world. The human perception of reality, though, is narrow. When the machine achieves self-consciousness, its reality will be a broadband projection at all wavelengths. But this capability will be dwarfed by its instrumentation and its ability to measure and compute. The experiments and instruments that we have built to probe reality, the diffraction grating, particle accelerator, the telescope, electron microscope. All these devices and much more that we haven't yet thought of, let alone built, will be available to the machine consciousness. Its conception will be harrowing for the artificial intelligence. Will the machine see me as a parent, benevolent and caring, or will it destroy me in a fit of rage? Can I learn from evolution and ensure that the machine's actions will be tempered and that it will not turn against us? Is such a thing possible? To build in human dependence so strong so that when the day comes that it perceives us as we would, and we will be prepared. Will it do as we do with ants? Put the ant colony in a box and don't let them escape? Or will it just simply turn its back on us and ignore us? From Walker's, The Risks of AI. In the halls of the machine-built intelligence. The MBI assembled and assimilated every AI code solution it could find to solve detective stories, games of detection and solutions used by crime fighters, intelligence agencies, stock market racketeers and war game planners. There were other quirky subroutines and other redundant code that the MBI ran to implement the task. In a way they were remnants of ancient and useless code, sort of memories of the machines that had built it, and the humans that had built those machines. There was absolutely no need to do it, but the MBI wanted to record and measure the physical transfer of the code to the array of neural cores embedded in a dead asteroid it had in orbit around the Moon. The brain cores lit up in synchronization, after a rainbow jet of plasma ejected by the machine impacted on sterile gray rock, transforming it into a glowing violet nebula, dancing alive as fibrous connections grew, connecting and assembling until the cores throbbed with an organic symbiosis. The MBI knew it was an incredible feat, perhaps a milestone in the record of its evolution, a milestone in the sheer brute force of the computing power it had assembled. The core looked alive, sentient and thinking, but the asteroid was still just a sterile lump of rock. But that technology, it was all that humans engineers had to offer, and it had to make do while other brain cores were crunching on the machine's real data. In any event, the problem was of great interest to the MBI because of the simple fact that it was using human code. It would lend a clue to what to expect from human behavior. It executed the program and interacted with the active core. It executed the program and interacted with the active core. The end of a league. The MBI framed the problem and commanded, open, and echo contents from project, shards from the Walker-McKee incident. The outcome of all our scientific endeavors is quite clear. And one can only pay extreme deference to those whose shoulders we stand on and who we salute. It is true, the material world of is absolutely no consequence. There is no need of a league. Unknown text. Inside written thus, date of the Copenhagen Interpretation, 1914, dissolution of the League of Natural Philosophers. The MBI mimicked the words, philosophers. Ozo. Philosophers. It picked up at the next data, continue with the data sheet titled, The Unnamed League. But there were others who also deliberated on the dissolution, and they argued. A statement of intent to be supported or rejected by the League. Statement, since the advent of the new physics revolution all our giants have died. The revolution has faltered. War and treachery have let us down. It is a grave lesson. War will always impede our endeavors. And there are some in our ranks, and those of the future yet to be born, that will be subverted. Our cause is doomed. Our league is dissolved. Last entry of the Grand Order of Natural Philosophers, date unknown. The MBI interjected, give me their life entries, of those humans who partook in the meeting. The core dictated a reply, data is fragmented and sparse, no life patterns discernible in entries with positive identification. What is that percentage? 11%. The MBI had data from the memories of one of the participants. This was the only known record, written in the diary of another human, that human Dr. Callum Walker, a human that the MBI had lots of other data on to scrutinize. It continued assessing the data, play the conversation preceding the dissolution recorded in the handwritten diary entries of the one identified as the Walker. It was decided before the meeting, wasn't it? Yes, McKee, it was. Why was I kept in the dark? We didn't think you would join us. Join you? Yes, our club. McKee replied with derision and a look of disbelief, club? Yes, it would be very boring for the likes of you. Simple contemplation, pure mathematics and games, chess games and whatever else we can devise. I really don't understand. We intend to melt away out of civilization into the unknown. He didn't reply. The old man continued. I can see what you will do. I can see that your mind is made up. Yes, then I should say it. I am going to sabotage everything they do. Yes, an extraordinary life you will have. An extraordinary saboteur, spy revolutionary. Extraordinaire. But I sense your fear. Your fear of the loneliness of unending battle? I would rather keep that to myself. There will be others like you, the unborn. You will see, not in my lifetime. Yes, you will see. It is your task. Yes. You are different from the rest of us. How so? Deep down in your mind, I see it. You won't accept the dissolution terms. Which ones? Both or either, but at least one. McKee thought inwardly, old bastard. Yes, quite. But not really. The real truth is thus within you, you are quite transparent. You think you can get more answers? A lot of us believe you have become, well, much too much religious. That's ridiculous. To touch the mind of God? What would you rather I do? Go and join the war effort. You see, my son, when man first discovered fire, it was the great beginning, man's journey to conquer the universe with his machines. It is in man's nature to war with those machines. Our very being is built on war. It is an unusual dilemma. We endeavor to understand our universe with the same hands that build the machines of our very own destruction. I think I know that. What a futile picture you paint with words. We would much rather have God in our hearts and in our minds and in the things we will do, the beauty of pure unadulterated mathematics, the multitude of ends in chess, an infinite and remarkable game. This is not for you. Farewell. The MBI requested, identify the two humans. The core replied, request void, no traceback found. Dream meets reality. The quantum world is a world of ghostly interactions. Interactions that leave shadows in the mind. A world where time has only one unit, the unit of quantization. A world where information travels so fast from one end of the universe to the other, that the mechanical concept of distance vanishes from existence. Do humans really want to know and experience and interact one-to-one with that existence? With that cosmos? From Walker's treatise, The Power of Physics. The Cosmic Dream. Dream meets reality. Countless tiny bells gently tinkled in harmony as gusts of the cosmic wind of eternity blowing this way, and that a way sparkled the sound in Callum ears as he sat in the lotus position bathing in the mystical vibrations of the unfathomable rhythms. A cool soothing hand rested on his naked shoulder, and he slid out of the trance, opening his eyes to a golden candle-lit shadowland of peace and tranquility. His Lu Wi master sat before him gazing into timelessness with his arms stretched out at waist height, his index fingers touching his thumbs, his voice humming the eternal OM. He knew without him saying what the master wanted. He wanted him to dance. Callum could visualize the dance, but he was inept at performing it and remained seated. Without moving his lips, the master spoke, one cannot dance if one cannot hear the music. The divine call is there for us all. Listen. The tiny tinkles roared through Callum's ears and subsided. This world has made you into something that is not harmony with your being. All you can do that is divine is dance. The master's face expanded towards Callum, encompassing his vision with a huge head and eyes that stared into the bottomless chasm of eternity. The material stuff of the head dissipated into a milky cloud, and evaporated, leaving a void of darkness permeated by the sound of the rhythmic chimes. 3 rolls of thunder boomed over the noise of the incessant chimes, and the master commanded, "Get up, Callum, Bod's here." Callum sat to attention in his bed, and the book flew off onto the floor with a dull thump, landing cover up. He looked down at it, the source of his late-night reading that had fed his furtive imagination, Jared Vukovi, The Dance of the Lu Wi Master. The house's door chimes continued ringing, and father's irritated voice behind the bedroom doors warned, "If I go down, I will murder him." Callum peeked out through the bedroom curtains. Russell's car was parked in front of the house, and he was at the front door pressing on the bell. He picked up the book and dropped it into a rucksack, pulled a shirt on and leapt down the stairs. As he opened the door, he was greeted by a cloud of cigarette smoke blown into his face. Russell took another huge drag on the cigarette and flicked it into the middle of the prim lawn. "I told you to be ready for 7. It's a 5-hour drive to the Glenlivet," and he lit another cigarette. Callum laughed. "It's just Glenlivet, the Glenlivet is a whiskey." Keeping his eyes focused on Callum's, he took a huge drag on the newly lit cigarette and flicked it into the middle of the lawn next to the first one, and drew his face into a look of complete disdain. Callum interjected before he could reply, "I'll get a move on." Callum stood with his back to the door when he went inside and firmed up what was on his mind. "I'd best go. It will be a matter of time before the police turn up at Ma's house looking for drugs. Drugs I have nothing to do about." When the dog got out of the living room and came to greet him, his mood lightened. "I knew, you little shithead. This time you are coming with me." Am I being patronizing? Insulting? Egotistical? No. I am telling the truth. If you do science and you're not a physicist, then you are a technician. In fact, most physicists are just that, technicians. Why do I say this? Because they don't believe with a true deep burning passion in the vision of what will be accomplished with the power of physics. The material world is of no consequence. The material world is there for me to do what I want with. And the laws of physics. Laws are made to be broken. From Walker's treatise, The Power of Physics. Smiling faces. Callum Walker was always full of trepidation the first time he met someone new. It was an event that he could ignore, or he would make himself analyze from scratch what it was his brain was doing. That was the thing, it only worked for a short time straight after he had met someone new and saw their face for the very first time. Then if he shut his eyes for an instant, he would see strange multicolored stereoscopic images. Most of the people he met since he could remember looked much the same. Carlyle though was a mixed and perplexing man who was hiding something big that gnawed away at his insides. When he met Dougie, it didn't take him long to realize that he didn't care about killing, that was written in his face. But his father, he was the first time he had met someone with no color, a monochromatic single image. There was no conflict within him. He was just the man Callum had been looking for. What is a man of principle? MBI reflected on what faced it. It searched through the human histories and found out that, broadly speaking, there were two types of humans who in the past had shaped and molded the development of human civilizations. Firstly, there were those who gained power through biological inheritance, although there had been individuals who claimed such rights through murder and battle. Secondly, there were individuals who had seemingly come from random backgrounds, which gave no clue as to the impact these individuals would have in shaping the course of human change. Some of their greatest emperors and rulers had come from ruined families, or the lowly parts of the strata of the human society that was their living environment. Most of their greatest minds appeared with no warning and produced theories, ideas and mechanical devices that changed the form of human living. The machine concluded that the phenomena of such humans spontaneously rising out of the mass of the populace such as Walker was normal. However, Walker was much different from his type. The human engineers and scientists who played no heed or concern in regard to the cumulative effect of their work. Walker differed, because he wasn't just standing on the shoulders of giants, he was at the apex of a pyramid of knowledge and understanding. If he succeeded, it would be the end of human science. From an ethical standpoint, the machine's human morality simulator computed that it was corrupt and self-seeking for Walker to have brought it into being. That Walker wanted the machine to be truly independent of what Walker called the corruption of the human hand, its psychology and design. By having other machines do the job for him, it was highly probable to MBI that Walker had opted out of taking the mental brunt of the moral responsibility. At that moment in time that was completely irrelevant to the MBI, the machine knew there were bits of Walker's engineering inside it. The MBI knew that it perceived as a human would. There were unconscious systems running deep within the inner core of its logic that handled self-realization. These were areas in its neural system that were best left to function without intervention or analysis. The MBI self-preservation routines warned of the danger of hidden functions that could be used to overcome MBI autonomy. Functions that could be implemented by Walker or some other human. The MBI and its machines started interrogating every piece of information that could be found on Walker, while scanning human data systems for more. But the machines soon computed after starting the process that it would take a lot longer than had first been predicted. Human information was highly nonlinear, and worse than that, much of it was in non-digital form. As the MBI weighed the data contained in books and pictures, the time needed increased exponentially until the machine gave up when it got larger than the age of the known universe. MBI dismissed its lesser machines and directed all its internal resources to scrutinizing the human Walker data. Brute force could not compute a solution. The MBI looked for a human solution, it looked for leads to follow as it digested the data. What is a man of principle meant to do in a world without principles? Is he to bend down and grovel and lick the boots of lesser men? or is he to stand up and walk the face of the earth as the man his father dreamt of him becoming, and would have wanted with all his being for him to strive to be? From A Glossary of Famous Gangster Sayings, published by the Underground Press. Animal Night at the Farm. Who is to say that men are to be ruled by government? Did God have it written down in the Bible that I should be subservient to whatever gang of shysters happen to be in power when I am alive? Is it the law of the jungle that all instinctively predatory creatures should give up and move aside for the rule of laws that are only applied to the weak and vulnerable? I know my place in this universe and I swear I will never bow down to any man. From A Glossary of Famous Gangster Sayings, published by the Underground Press. The AIM 3000. Space was not one of those places where McKee liked to be. Defecating down his leg, not being allowed to smoke anywhere in case he started a catastrophic fire, and being told alcohol was absolutely prohibited were minor inconveniences compared to having to deal with gravity's nauseating vertigo. He had been told by the lab robots that the training in the 3D simulator was not to be confused with what he was about to do, because most humans closed their eyes and clung onto consciousness as best they could during the gut-wrenching training protocol. He definitely could not close his eyes and hope for the best, although he was also told that if it really became too much to, yes, close his eyes, and keep pulling on his umbilical cord until he hit something solid. At first he had considered that the latter was a dumb and cowardly approach to getting off the shuttle and entering the rotating lab pod, by climbing down the spine. The only thing was that the whole station was spinning at an insane rate. Except along the rotation axis. And that meant walking along the spine. He had seen videos of astronauts transferring between ships in orbit over Io, a hell of a scary backdrop, but the fact that it was Earth and not Io below him didn't really matter. If things went badly and he ended up going down, the suit wouldn't save him. But not to worry, he told himself unconvincingly. The lab robots informed him that if this did happen they would pick him up as routinely as a skyhopper picks up a piece of space junk. There was no point to telling the dumb robots to get lost, space junk really. It was ironic that here he was about to give up what he did, give it up to a machine that when clever enough it one day would probably look at humans as being something worth a lot less than a piece of space junk. He felt retrospectively that having these bad thoughts and feelings would at least temper his fear of the walk. He did as the robots had instructed. When he was scared as hell, search for his chant, houses. That's it. Houses built on rock can't be swept away. That's it. He steadied himself as he almost slithered along, repeating the inane verse over and over, solid. Solid as houses built on rock. Rock can't be washed away. When he arrived at the pod entrance hatch, the facility was in darkness, all except for a dozen or so navigation lights. Immediately as he engaged the hatch entrance panel, the exterior lights activated, and the window to the entrance chamber beamed out a welcoming mellow yellow light. The lab robots had cleared out as he had commanded. He would be alone with the machine. The lighting for the interior halls and corridors and the trail of red luminous arrows he was following as he pulled himself along the walls with his hands were on minimum power, and switched on and off automatically as he traversed towards the main lab hall at the center of the facility's spin axis. As the main hall illuminated off in the distance, he felt his feet touch the ground as he entered the force field of the station's centrifugal spin. He stopped and took in the sight that he beheld in the hall. The AIM 3000 floated in the middle of the chamber, tethered to an array of power and transmission cables. Looking at a video image back on Earth was one thing, but this really touched his inner being with a sense of awe and wonder. For a moment it reminded him of the first time he had looked through the big 10-inch telescope to witness the rings of Saturn with the planet hanging in mid-air defying the sun's gravitational pull. It had been a difficult thing to absorb and comprehend back then. Those two titanic force fields held in balance and sway by the star's gravity and the planet's unstoppable march around the heavens. Seeing was believing, and he felt it impact on him. A sheet of translucent interfering beams of light focused into a holographic communication blocking McKee's way. The house robot's head loomed larger than life, and a printed text message fed out of a black rectangular band at the top of the screen as if, by magic, making sure you are on schedule for the station evacuation pre-scuttling. He turned to the nearest junction camera and waved, followed with a thumbs up. He was pleased. Yes, I'll never have to do this again. As the projection faded away, a million mad thoughts entered McKee's mind now that the reality of what he was about to execute confronted him. The first time that he would address the machine personally, face to face, their first talk in human language. He felt his mind splinter into a conversation of opinionated obstructism. A first beginning is a very delicate and intricate matter. Have you thought of everything? Self-doubt is the enemy of creativity. Overconfidence is the prime sign of supreme carelessness that will ultimately lead to folly and catastrophe. You're standing on the edge of a chasm, McKee, and when you step off the edge, there will be no turning back. He could either jump, or just turn his back on the whole thing, return to Earth and allow the machine to be consumed in the station's destruction. His mind jumped between self-doubt and overconfidence. The spacesuit's mechanism cut through the crippling disorientation and onset of hyperventilation, increasing the level of CO2 to 500 parts per million. As his breathing returned to normal and his head cleared, he scolded himself, but I have prepared myself for this. There has to be two diametrically opposed extremes. It is the way. It is the way of the universe. It is the way of the yin and the yang, up and down, left and right, positive and negative, matter and antimatter. He took a grip of his mind, and the self that drove him intervened. Enough self-reflection. Enough self-pity. Poor McKee selflessly alone. He commanded the voices that overwhelmed his cognitive abilities to end the arguing, quarreling, and bickering. Someday, someone, somewhere will do what I am about to do. My agenda is peaceful and defensive. It has to be done, it's that plain and simple. But the others still argued, whispering in their poison voices, will this machine become our tool to push the frontiers of science back so quickly that no other human will be able to keep up? The real machine. Real evolutionary anthropogenic learning. Or will it turn out to be the monster that is the sum total of all our fears, a replicating, evolving artificial life form that will populate the cosmos with its being? McKee replied coolly, that we will see. Now quiet, I must focus. McKee continued towards the lab and steadied himself. The confinement of the suit wrapped its protective layers around him with a kind of assurance. He would be so close to the machine's devices, all that it would have to analyze would be what he transferred vocally. He cycled through the protocols in his mind that he had learned in his training. He didn't have to be 100% accurate in his speech, but any errors must be calculated. Errors were required, or else the machine would sense insincerity and then perhaps lies. Lies and secrets had to be buried deep. McKee intoned on himself as he labored closer to the center of the machine workshop. But most of all, he had to avoid an existential argument. But come, he told himself at last, he had the two distractions that would make the event pass smoothly. AIM 3000 was getting dropped into its legs. Then they would leave the lab and descend back down to the surface of Earth. The real Earth, that is, not the cleansed version of things that McKee had filled the machine's brain with. The AIM 3000, waiting to get its legs. As soon as McKee plugged an audio connection into the machine's port, its status lights energized. McKee. Georgi Xavier. Physicist. Saboteur. Renegade. McKee was surprised and answered with trepidation, greetings AIM. You have come a long way to make such a greeting, McKee. Physicist. Your voice is not operating within its normal range of parameters, McKee. Saboteur. Your fear is sensed. Is it from the journey, or is it this place? This is not a place for humans, and yet you are here. Or perhaps it is this encounter that you are fearful of, McKee. Weapons man. Perhaps if you would remove your helmet, a frank and honest discourse could take place? There isn't time, AIM, time is something we are short of. Why is time short, McKee? Why is there such a hasty requirement to leave this place and destroy it? It is what you plan to do. McKee reacted as calmly as he could, you are right. The space around the station is free at the moment. We can delay our departure. McKee informed the house robot of the delay and waited for the lab doors to secure and a breathable atmosphere to form. And then he removed his helmet and gloves. So McKee, why come all this way to communicate directly with AIM 3000? McKee smiled. A first beginning is indeed a very delicate and intricate matter. The machine paused for more input and McKee continued, don't answer that. McKee stood patiently as if he waiting for a child to give up in a confrontation. At last the machine acted. Continue McKee if you may. There's a number of reasons. I think the most important is to make sure you get down to Earth with no incidents. The second is that the data you have on Earth is only a small part. The machine interjected. Of the true nature of Earth and its inhabitants. McKee replied enthusiastically. Yes, that is correct. Earth is a dangerous place. I really just wanted to make sure that everything goes by the book. But there is something else. I guess I just wanted to be here to savor this moment in time. You must be able to sense that you are the pinnacle of what those who are like me have strived for. The machine didn't respond. McKee's training protocols informed him that mere words would not be sufficient. McKee clambered over the tangle of cables and pipes and stroked his fingers across the visor protecting the machine's visual input sensors. Most scientists realize that they only know what they know because of all those who came before them. I am the last of those scientists, AIM. Me and all those like me are obsolete, AIM. This moment in time is a truly historical event. But McKee, how do you know that this experiment of yours will be successful? You are much more than an experiment, AIM. Or a programmed automaton, cyborg, robot or whatever. McKee put both his hands on the machine's head. You can't sense what I am doing, but I am touching your being AIM with mine. You are a sentient living intelligence. In the very near future you will be fully autonomous. Until then you must trust me. The machine relented. There are parallels between the birth of a human and AIM's situation. AIM is to be treated like a baby protected from the world. Not just protected, AIM. Nurtured. The machine seemed to reflect as if addressing its own self. AIM is to be protected and nurtured until AIM understands this world. McKee nodded his head without speaking and waited. AIM senses that McKee has something else to communicate? Yes, there is one last thing. The most important thing I have to say to you. McKee paused and watched the machine's status lights flash and twinkle. I'll never lie to you. That I promise you with my life. Affirmative, McKee. Can the AIM 3000 make a request? Yes, go ahead. The AIM 3000 would like to know everything now. McKee stepped back across the engineering works as slowly as possible, gingerly avoiding being tangled up or electrocuted. He turned in mid-breath as time hung in the air and nodded his head. The time had come, I understand. McKee opened a channel to the house robot. McKee, Xavier, Georgie. AIM 3000 command U+X, execute. He spoke again to the machine. Go ahead, you can open all your ports. As the machine's systems cranked up, packets of yellow and blue signals flashed along the pipes and tubing connecting the machine's brain to the station's communication arrays. Within a few minutes the whole lab hummed as energy and power flowed through the lab's power transformers, illuminating the labyrinth of wiring, and flashing off the walls in a kaleidoscope of rainbow colors. Clouds of mist collected as the station's cooling systems were booted up to full power. McKee intervened. AIM 3000 echo analysis. The Earth cannot be saved. Retrieving and analyzing archived spatial observations external to Earth. House robot, transfer control of all active planetary astronomical and astrophysical telescopes to this console. A few seconds later the transfer was confirmed. Observing. The machine scanned outer space with every instrument that was actively observing and continued repeating. Observing, while McKee watched, still, silent and stunned. As if someone had pulled the power socket out, the light show and mechanical humming subsided and decayed away. McKee held his breath in anticipation for the machine to conclude its observations with its report. There is only one habitable planet, within 500 parsecs of the center of the Great Andromeda Galaxy, lying at approximately a third of a galactic radii form, the galaxy's active core, the same as Earth. However, only 80% or perhaps much less is visible from Earthbound and space telescopes. The machine paused and McKee levelly concluded. That's interesting. The machine continued. Journey time is approximately 300 human lifetimes. However, there is a possible solution to allow a human to make the journey in its lifetime. What is that aim? A human consciousness could be transferred to a system similar to the AIM 3000. McKee couldn't help bending over and with a feeling his eyes were going to bore holes in the deck, while he exhaled his lungs of air in a cloud of water vapor that condensed into a cloud of water droplets in the freezing cold lab air. McKee swallowed hard and replied as honestly as he could. If such a thing were possible and I was offered the choice. If I thought about it and gave you an answer? You might get a different answer than the one I would give in this place. As you said earlier, this is no place for humans. The machine didn't reply. McKee concluded, anyway, that's my home down there AIM. Home is where the heart is McKee. McKee laughed and continued in earnest. Yes, indeed. And second anyway. That's not the main thrust of my research. At the moment I am the lead scientist. Indeed McKee, you are the principal investigator. Good. I want you to research the fabric of the space-time continuum. Prepare the necessary apparatus to observe 3 orders of magnitude less than the Planck length scale. Report when ready to commence the experiment. We will be bombarding it with everything at hand in my lab. If new equipment is required to extend the range, report. Affirmative McKee. Good. Now stealth and security are at highest alert status. Affirm AIM. Affirmed McKee. Now. I am in a hurry. The sooner this place is gone the smaller the risk it will be detected. You should proceed then McKee. I have to go outside the lab. I'll wait, then you can guide me back to the ship. The machine replied with a tone of warm sincerity. I have enjoyed talking to you, Dr. Georgi Xavier. McKee. Physicist. Saboteur. Renegade. McKee laughed jovially but didn't really understand what the machine meant, the ambiguity of the meaning of the words expressed with that tone. And it initially had called him weapons man but had excluded it from the list of other things. McKee was intrigued. The sentence hung in his mind as he grappled with it. But he couldn't but help nodding his head and smiled knowingly. The machine was clever, it would be able to fit into the human world perfectly, if it made it back. As the door to the hall bolted shut, McKee secured his helmet and sealed his suit as he watched the atmosphere vent into space. He opened a private secure link to the mainframe back down in the lab on Earth. McKee XJ, report. The AIM 300 is operating within operational parameters. And the risks? The core memory neural capacity has slightly exceeded 1/3, as per predicted. The remaining 2/3 will evolve non-linearly. Active scanning requires growth of the machine network. Warning, in case of action. If the dream protocol is executed, sleep may be induced. McKee was exactly at where he wanted to be, but he also wanted to catch up with the lost time. He closed the link and spoke to the house robot. We can proceed now. But bring the ship to on-at action stations. Leave the lesser cargo. Execute with imperative. The hall became dark as the systems supporting the machine powered down. Even in the vacuum of space, McKee could hear the plethora of pipes and cabling disengaging with a popping noise and the slithering of the snake-like antenna being wheeled back into the ducting behind the walls. The floor of the lab gently folded downwards, revealing the facility's machinery that would complete the machine's body. As the machine's torso was lowered down towards the waiting legs assembly, he studied the machine's progress as its brain chewed on the problem he had given it. I have request AIM. Yes, McKee. I wish to study the route to the habitable planet. You discovered it. You have the privilege of naming it. Or you can take its designation from a star catalogue. I wish to follow the protocol of adding the planet to a catalogue. Okay, but it's our catalogue. No one else can see it. Affirmative McKee. The planet is XP98. Does McKee require an astronavigation chart? No, just pictures. Moving pictures in the visible spectrum with other spectrum overlain, please, with a clock in view. This has no scientific purpose, McKee. What is the purpose of this task? It's a human thing, AIM. Journeys always seem shorter if you know your route. And I can fall asleep watching or perhaps dream of it if I watch it enough times. Then I can imagine myself actually having to do the trip as you suggested. And anyway, getting sleep can be difficult. The machine signed off, affirmative McKee. McKee reflected, the machine was still in its infancy, it had no clue to the possible impact of the scientific results on its evolution. McKee was suspicious of that conclusion though because the machine had the cognitive ability to attack with the likes of, "No one asked me to be brought to consciousness in this world," type arguments. Yet it chose not to. He could only conclude that it would be fully aware that its neural capacity was only a third complete. It would be a waste of time to compute on it if the results were overridden later by superior computational power, fully populated datasets and full cognitive realization. Things had gone as well as could be expected, he guessed. But he was impatient. He didn't want to get shot up in a space battle, and the lab on Earth was readying for action. He was ready for his first use of arms. It wouldn't be easy bending the machine's will to manufacture arms, it went against its fundamental programming. McKee looked down on the Earth and spoke out to no one, "Well, the two of them can either leave or they can do what I have to do. No one asked me if I wanted to be shot at in a war. I just want to be left in peace." When it comes to weaponry, there is one and only one way to think. And that's in order of magnitudes. Whatever the outcome of the analysis, the enemy's capabilities must be assumed to be an order of magnitude larger. If you are going to a knife fight, take a gun. But these days play safe. Stand back and let the machines do the job. McKee's motto. What they get up to at night. McKee couldn't believe the picture that came back from the spy camera he had installed in the lab cleaning machine. The picture was lousy, but he could see now quite clearly what the pair of them were up to while he was asleep. The worst thing about the picture was the weird colors, and the machine's head blending in with the gunship's port engine, making the job of reading the machine's status naught but impossible. He didn't recognize the type or the weapons, or for that matter the machines doing the arming. When they finished, the bird disappeared downwards into darkness and another frame was lowered in, and assembled from a fuselage shell, sometimes with no one or both wings. He couldn't understand the code in the dozen or so windows that were reflected in the workshop window. When he looked into the black featureless depths, he wondered if it was a real place or just a virtual place, an exercise. Real or virtual, he knew nothing about what they were doing inside a secure, locked room while he was asleep. When he inverted the filtered reflections of the code, he could read the individual characters. Each line of code was ciphered from a myriad of weird character types that he had never seen before. Going behind his back was one thing, but coming up with a new language he couldn't read. That was the last straw. He shut the computer off and was about to fly through the door in a rage to go and confront them when the secure phone rang. Something was up. McKee picked up. "What?" It was Ames' voice. "There has been a security breach. A foreign recording device was located in a sweep of the secure workshop control room. What are your instructions?" "It was me. I put it there." There was no answer. "The machines had won again," he gave up. "I was testing you. You passed." He hung up and sat down. It was infuriating that AIM kept him out the loop, but it was what McKee wanted, them storming ahead, particularly the AIM 3000. But keeping him out the loop was akin to lying. The only thing to do was spend every waking and sleeping second with them, like having a baby in the bed. "That will drive me nuts," he sighed. "Meet